So this video may be gauged more towards the youth of America, those of you that haven't been too tainted yet. And what I mean by tainted is that absolute certainty and social programming is inevitable in society, and we all are affected by this. What you see a lot in social media presently are one of two things, without much of a middle and without many solutions, which is propaganda, basically. You have one side that is completely distracted, that's trapped in stupidity and completely avoiding any and all potential problems present and looming. And then we have the other side, which are the doomers, which are warning us and filling us with fear mongering. And, I often call out YouTubers about their fear mongering because I think there's a special place in hell for people that give you fear with no solutions. And so today, I'm going to give you a problem and I'm going to give you a potential solution, but this is going to challenge you because of our programming, because of our social programming being raised in a country where capitalism dominates. And capitalism isn't just a form of economic structure. It's not just an economic structure. It's also a psychology. And this is why it's a psychology, because most capitalism, and now capitalism has changed into a more sociopathic form, meaning it is benefits very few people and in generally a small minority of people who are willing to not do the right things in order to profit and to completely take advantage and destroy other people's lives in the process of profiting. That's how I define sociopathic capitalism. Things that destroy the future through ecological destruction and pollution. And I'm not anti-capitalist. I've been a entrepreneur most of my life, and I came from entrepreneurs, and I have benefited from the American dream without an education and without coming from a family that supported me at all. So growing up in poverty or growing up with the working poor, even back in the 1970s and 80s, the one thing that struck my little brain and struck me emotionally about my neighbors, even back then, was the fact that everyone was convinced that they didn't have enough. Everyone was convinced that they were poor because they were always looking at television and what the standard was set by propaganda, set by sitcoms and movies, and then measuring themselves to that, which it's impossible to measure up, because even though hypothetically we live in a country that all men are created equal, that is not true. We are not created equal. And the reason we're not created equal is because everyone is born into different circumstances, different traumas, different levels of intelligence, and all of those things create barriers and burdens that separate us into different economic classes and challenge us. And that's the whole ideal of the American dream, is that it's this place you can work really hard. As long as you work, you will have the American dream. And then that dream has been so singularly defined that it also separates everybody. It turns everyone into this like dog eat dog, survivalist. Sure, we candy coat it with fake civilities and our green lawns and our nice cars. But ultimately, the root, the idea of capitalism is that you're on your own and you're going to have to work your ass off and do whatever it takes to succeed. And to succeed, and those successes are set or the ideas behind those successes are all pre-established, which means having the right house, having the right car, being able to afford the right neighborhood or whatever foods you want to eat, putting your kids in a good school, blah, 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 blah. Less worries. So what I'm getting around to here is growing up in a neighborhood that was working poor and poor. Many of my neighbors were on welfare. Uh, my parents struggled with alcoholism and were terrible with money. My father's Native American, so he came from generational trauma and poverty and then was forced into factory labor, and he was really unhappy, both because of his childhood trauma that he never got counseling for, and the fact that for most people, physical labor, factory labor is miserable. But back then, it still offered you a little slice of the American dream if you had your shit together. If you had your shit together. But most people that go into factory work and manual labor are literally doing it as a survival mood, and the benefits, the wages, and a lot of things in regards to the stability that used to come with that, and being able to possibly juxtapose yourself into a position of achieving middle class status no longer exist, just like with our postal workers and many other jobs in America. Being a kid and looking at my neighbors. So even my neighbors that were on the welfare system, their utilities were paid for, their food was provided for, almost their healthcare was provided for. They had multiple television sets. And so when I looked at my dad working his ass off, and the fact that we had to keep our house at like 50 degrees because we couldn't afford the gas in the middle of winter in the north, and that, my mom's cutting coupons and trying to feed us on this mega budget, I thought to myself, I'm like, wow, who are the poor people? The people on public assistance or us? And I remember the one time my dad lost his job for a few months because the company that he worked for, Tiltson's in Toledo, Ohio, decided that they were going to move to the South for tax, same reason companies move now, tax benefits, cheaper labor. My mom just refused to move to the South. And so my dad was unemployed for, I think, 6 months, and we had food stamps. And we were on food stamps. Oh my God, that was the first time I actually ate real cheese. Up to that point, all I'd ever had was Velveeta and these really sad, cheap processed cheeses. But government cheese is great. And it came in this giant block, and it was a hard cheese, like this delicious white cheddar. And because we had so much of it, my mom didn't police it, how much we ate. And we had steaks, and it was amazing, minus my dad's pride, but being on food stamps was great. But I'm going to get to my point here. That's just a little sidetrack story that's ironic. It's ironic, right? My neighbors, they were from the South originally, my neighbors that were on welfare, and they kept their house so hot at wintertime. Now, I told you, we couldn't afford gas to pay for the gas to keep our house above 60 degrees. And our neighbors would keep our house so hot that they had house plants, and the house plants would grow giant, like they were in the jungle. It was such a physical thing. It was so mocking and hysterical. So Even given, though, that many people in our neighborhood had, even those that were poor or on assistance, uh, had everything they needed. They had enough food that they could even be obese. There was still this poison. It's this societal poison that comes from the media, which comes from television, that comes from capitalism, that told them they were poor and they didn't have enough. And because they believed this, instead of the neighborhood coming together and looking out for each other, instead of sharing resources, if indeed you didn't have enough, instead of doing any of those basic things that was the essence of human survival and why we have gotten and dominated as far as we have as a species, the tribal mentality, everyone turns on each other. Everyone turned on each other. There was so much violence in the neighborhood, and there was so much theft in the neighborhood, and there was so much selfishness, and there was so much ugliness. So I have this real hatred towards ugly now. Like when I see a house that's ran down, when I see people that don't take care of what they have, I get this literal like repulsion for it, because to me, it's a psychological representation of someone who has bought into bullshit. So now, once again, we're being faced with economic challenges, and our children and young adults are being infantilized by economically infantilized, I call it, economic infantilization, because they can't afford to live on their own. They can't even afford a one-bedroom apartment, so they're stuck at home with their parents forever. And when you are dependent on someone else, especially when you never have an opportunity to experience what it's like to take chances, what it's like to pay your own bills, how much it costs to leave that light on or crank the heat up past 70, 75, you stay in this childlike state. You have this unawareness of the responsibilities of being an adult. So that has a real negative effect on society, a real negative effect on society. It's a problem in America. And no, I don't think we're living in the same America that you can just work your ass off and everything will be okay, because there's so many things in place that prevent small businesses from thriving here. Even postage, the price of postage. If the government was really interested in helping small businesses and making America great again, one of the things they would do would be to supplement and help small businesses with the price of postage. Back in the day when you didn't have money and your family lived in another town, another state, you would make stuff. You'd make stuff, canned goods, cookies, blah, 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 and you'd mail it to them. And that was the way you could still share and share part of yourself without having to consume or buy it on Amazon. Now, the price of shipping is so expensive that you no longer can send. Most people can't afford to even send a gift to someone in the mail unless the shipping is paid for through one of these giant companies. And do you think that might be on purpose? Possibly. Do you think perhaps that was really well thought out between different entities supporting sociopathic capitalism? So going into these darker times, going into these, what I believe are going to be some serious economic hardships, what can people do? What can they do that was different than what they did in the 70s, in the 80s, in the 60s? Well, see, so here is the challenge. Here's the challenge. When people see these intentional communities, the hippies, right away we're programmed to be repulsed. It's a cult. It's a cult. Well, what is a church? What's the difference? Except these people are willing to come together and make the sacrifice of sometimes personal space and individuality, the hype and the over exaggeration of the individual to have a better quality of life, or a life with less stress in it, to have actual social security. Social security, if you think of those two words, it means that your butt's covered if you get sick, if your car breaks down, if something happens to you, society has your back. But in America right now, even though we pay into it, I think we're getting a really good idea of how we do not actually have Social Security. There's a lot of countries that they don't lose sleep overnight if they develop a sickness. They don't lose sleep overnight if they have to miss a few days or a week's worth of work. That's Social Security, not what we have here in America. What we have here in America is a lot of propaganda and bullshit that says we have great health care, the best in the world, and that we have Social Security. But in fact, we have a very cruel system put in place that nobody has challenged because of our programming, that pulling your resources together and acting as a tribe or as a community is a bad thing, that it's a cult, that you have to sacrifice your personal freedoms or what have you. You just think about it. Just think about it for yourself when you think of living, if you had to live in a commune, if you had to live in a tribal setting. So why can't there be something in between is the question. And this is where I'm very good at something that most people are not. And that is reinventing things and questioning the status quo. Going into the near future here, somebody has to be an actual leader, a leader without dark motives. You cannot count on most government entities to have really your best interests at heart. They're all answering to somebody, and they're all part of this system that's been put in place for a long time and now is being really exposed. And I don't mean in the way that you may think I am insinuating. If you live in a neighborhood where people struggle or show this kind of selfishness, I mean, most people, a lot of people, even in the Midwest now, they don't even know their neighbors. Is that Social Security? Is that healthy? Is that normal? No, it's become normal and it's become acceptable, but that creates strangers, which creates more insecurity, which creates more fear. So if you have accepted this, then you're part of the problem. Imagine if a neighborhood came together, they chose a couple people's houses that they're not using their backyard, or a space in the neighborhood that's not being used, that they could do some guerrilla gardening. And everyone came together to pool their resources to save all the scraps from their houses, and they got some chickens. And everyone came together and they got a bunch of recycled stuff that people were throwing away, or they go to the dump and they find some wood, or everyone throws in $20 and they get a flock of chickens going. And then everybody's waste from their house is helping to feed those chickens. And then this money also is rolled into a community garden where people are growing fresh food and sharing it between themselves. Why do we depend and allow ourselves to depend so much on a system that's not actually working for us? Why aren't we trying to take care of each other when we all know at this point that it's a game, the game that we've been told that our tax dollars are actually going towards, that we'll be okay and taken care of in our old age, that we're going to be okay if we get sick, that we're going to have Social Security, enough money to live a good life when we can't work anymore. I mean, even that alone, people don't think about the age that you're allowed to retire versus the age, the life expectancy of most Americans, or the age when your health starts to dramatically deteriorate because of a lifetime of bad food, a poor diet, and a lot of stress. I mean, they must have picked some real demons of economists to come up with a retirement age here in the United States. So in the future, if people don't want to just survive in this weird, like, hoarding, fearful, prepper kind of way, you have an alternative. But the alternative is going to take people sharing, people trusting, people negotiating space and their individualism for allowing other people the same rights and privileges. And people have to step up. People have to step up. There has to be leadership, and actual leadership, unbiased, critical thinking, effective leadership. And if people can start this movement, if people can start taking care of each other in the ways, the ways of the tribe, the way of the village, your life will improve. A lot of lives will improve. And I don't think we need to bring this to the attention of everybody. I don't think we need to put this on YouTube everywhere per se. We don't need the government to know. We don't need everyone's approval. You know the people who are cool right now. You'd probably know the people you can trust. And if you don't know somebody that's cool and you don't have any neighbors you can trust, move or figure it out, because thriving, not surviving, thriving in the future is going to depend on people cooperating. And the programming and propaganda that we have received the last 50 years probably has been the opposite of this. It's all been about the ego, the individual, and singular success and singular wealth, which there's nothing wrong with that if that's your trip, but you have to be realistic. You have to be realistic. Is this something that you have the resources and you're actually going to achieve in your lifetime? Or maybe it's okay to break the mold. It's okay to individuate in a different way and embrace humanity, embrace community, embrace true social security, and not give all your power away to a system that hasn't been working for quite a while and looks extremely dismal in the future. I personally never expected Social Security to be there for me when I got old. Maybe in this meager way, but all you have to do is look at people who are struggling to survive, the elderly, on basic benefits and Social Security. And that's not what I wanted to experience when I was a senior citizen. That's surviving. I think surviving is overrated. It's thriving. Nature wants to thrive. Thriving is where people heal. Thriving is where people feel the true wealth of sharing. On my property here, I don't just grow enough for me. Me. Right now, I have a lot of eggs. I was way ahead. I saw the bird flu coming, and I prepared a couple years ago, and I have a great flock of chickens, and I have extra eggs. And what do I do with those eggs? Do I sell them? Not many. Some to help pay for the chicken feed. I give them away. Who do I give them away to? I give them away to the working poor. I give them away to the delivery people, the postman, anybody who is in service and improving my life. It's like giving them a $10 tip now. Vegetables, fruit. But my neighbors, when I first moved here, I was like, give. I give them canned goods. I give them fruit. I give them advice. And what I noticed really quickly was this, even though they all have plenty, they have fruits full of trees, they've got land, they've got, they work for major tech corporations, but they all have that stingy, individual poverty mentality where they don't get humanity anymore. And so after years of doing all this giving and hosting the parties and giving away literally hundreds of cans of canned goods that I grew organically and like handcrafted, like none of them even have the basic respect or the basic intelligence to understand the investment of time and resources that I shared with them. So last year around the holidays, I waited to see if just one person, the 10 years that I've lived in this community, because in my community, it's always when they want to manipulate you into getting something, it's all about community. But actual community, not really. So I waited to see if one person, one family, one person would do a preemptive give around the holidays, even a card, anything, and nothing. So for the first time last year, I didn't share. I didn't give my resources and my time and my love away to people that don't respect it, that don't understand it, people that are completely poisoned with this American selfishness, I'm going to call it. It's a selfishness. It's a self-imposed form of poverty. It's a form of poverty. And now I'm taking all that energy and I'm going to put it into myself and into, sharing those resources with people who not only actually need them, but people who actually appreciate them. But isn't it sad? That, I would always ask my neighbors, if you could please just give me the canning jars back, because they've gotten expensive. They're $1 to $2 each. And when you're giving away hundreds of cans of food a year, it adds up. And that means every autumn, I have to buy hundreds and hundreds of dollars worth of canning jars to replace the ones that no one even had the common decency to return. It's just that level of selfishness that's your challenge. That's your challenge, is finding other people in your community that will step up and understand how a tribe works, that can break this grotesque spell of sociopathic capitalism and poverty mentality and fear of each other that has taken over real community here in America. And, I will go as far to say that I do believe that this is also one of the reasons for the Great Separation. The Great Separation, I'm calling it, instead of the Great Depression. The Great Separation between people here in the US. And, that's also being pronounced in the haves and the have-nots, where our middle class is disappearing. And there's reasons that the middle class is disappearing, and it's more than just economics. And that's a whole nother topic of conversation that I could put 30 minutes to an hour into. But right now, back to the solution. If you want to prepare yourself not to starve, if you want to prepare yourself to at least have the quality, the basics of thriving, the edge above surviving, start finding your tribe. Start finding the people that you can count on that don't just blah, 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 but act. People that you can depend on. You start with people that are good with animals because they have a layer of empathy. Often they're wounded people that, don't really trust other humans. Can you blame them? But if you can get them to trust you, they're probably one of the most dependable types of people that you'll ever have as a friend or an ally. Number 2, people that are good with plants and growing things. These are special people. People that grow plants, they don't look at life and other living thing as inanimate objects. They have a sensitivity and a respect and also a follow through. They can nurture, they can feel things because it takes a lot to keep a plant alive, a lot more. And that's why many people have brown thumbs. That's not just a thing. It's a thing if you really analyze it. It's not just people who don't have a sensitivity for other living things, but often they're people who neglect their own health, that can't really can't even take vitamins every day because they lack basic self-care, self-love, and self-discipline. So plant people are special people. And I could go on from there, but I want you to fill in your own blanks. I don't want to do all the thinking for you. It's time that we start questioning our certainties. Certainty, absolute certainty, is a very dangerous thing. It's time that we start questioning, but also experimenting with different methodologies and different systems of society and how we live as a society. And I think returning to or integrating tribal systems of belief and tribal systems of economics may be a really good step backwards. And not backwards in a negative way, but backwards in into a system that worked for us really well for hundreds and thousands of years, and truly is one of the only reasons that we are here dominating this planet today. It's because we depended and could rely on each other. Thank you for watching my YouTube video. Please subscribe, it helps. Take care.